Hey, welcome to Offside with Haas McGuire. This is our segment we like to call Shooting the
Shot.
That's right, that's a shot. Shooting the Shot with Haas McGuire. I'm Haas.
I'm McGuire.
Today we have a special guest.
Yes, we do.
Liam is wearing his Montreal Canadiens golf
What?
shirt.
I didn't even think you noticed.
Oh, I noticed. It's you spelt it wrong. It's supposed to be with a B. It's supposed to be with a B.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
they beat the Bees all the time.
Yeah, well, they
Shutty's
like
day.
them. I don't want to. Let's not get into that right now because we're
Bruin fan here,
Yeah,
Steve.
you know,
So we'll have some fun.
So I hadn't even introduced him yet. Now
I
we know who
know,
he is.
I know.
So from like probably the greatest dynasty in hockey history, and I have to admit it, the Montreal Canadiens in the 1970s. We're joined today by Steve Shutt, Hall of Famer Steve Shutt. Steve, thanks for coming.
Thanks. You guys got me off the golf course,
Yeah.
but the good news is you came all the way down here to River Strand to meet me, so I'm not going anywhere.
And that's what we love about it, Shutty. We love that, and thank you so much for joining us on the show. We've been touring the state, eh, Chris?
We've done some miles.
Yeah, we've done some miles.
Did you guys bring all this cold weather?
Well,
down?
I'm starting to
I mean,
wonder.
this is
you know?
Canadian weather down here.
It is
right
Canadian
now.
weather. I mean, this is like winter day in Toronto.
Yeah,
That is, yeah.
Not here for Florida.
No.
I mean, Florida usually is about 75, but it's about 55 today.
Yeah.
But you know what it does? It makes you appreciate those 75 days.
I guess that's one way of putting it.
Yeah,
That's one way of putting it, for
I'm not impressing you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So we're going to start by Liam's going to rattle off. I know a couple things, but Liam knows more. So Liam, why don't you tell us about our guest today?
Yeah, absolutely. We have got one of the greatest left wingers in NHL history here today joining us, Steve Shutt, drafted 4th overall in 1972 by the Montreal Canadiens. His line out of junior in Toronto, Shutt, Gardner, and Harris, they absolutely tore it up. All three of them drafted in the top 8 in the draft that year. Billy Harris going first, Stevie 8th, Gardner to the Habs as well, 8th. Montreal had a hell of a draft that year. Bunny LaRocque, Van Boxmeer, Billy Nyrup, these guys all the same draft. Shutty went on to played very briefly in Nova Scotia, 5-6 games, scored 4 goals, called right back up, won 5 Stanley Cups. Number 22, left wing. It's the thing about Lafleur and Shutt is they had Pete Mahovlich, Jacques Lemaire, Pierre LaRouche, 3 centermen. Everybody scored. Everybody could. The centerman could dish the puck, and you had these 2 dynamic wingers who just absolutely lit it up for consecutive seasons. And Steve, what I like from a numerical point of view is kind of a neat thing of his NHL career, Chris, because he scored 8 goals, then 15, then 30, then 45, then 60, then 49. Like he had 9 consecutive 30-goal seasons. But if you look how the numbers went up, 8, 15, 30, 45, 60, like all by 15. Like every season he got better by 15 goals. It was just kind of a numerical thing.
Now,
but
was that a plan?
Not really.
Was there an empty netter at the end of the season? He was like, I can't do this. This
No.
is 16. It'll throw things off.
No, it was the 49. I remember when I was stuck at 49
Yeah.
I had 2 games. We played against Detroit, and the problem was everybody in the team was trying to pass me the puck,
yeah.
and everybody in Detroit knew it.
Yeah.
Right.
So I mean, I had 3 guys around me from Detroit, so
Yeah.
that's why I didn't get the 50th.
Well, you know what? Coming off a 60-goal season, so I mean, you and Flower, first of all, 9 straight 30, incredible, especially from a Montreal perspective, and then 60, you and Flower tied with that, and it's. I mean, Steve Shutt, puck, your shot was unbelievable. We're going to get into all of that, but that's just to finally say that he went to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1993. Right. So we're dealing with a Hockey Hall of Famer here. So this is an absolute pleasure, Steve, to be talking to you again. I haven't seen you in a long time, so we're really glad you welcomed us here to your club where you're a member. You're a member here.
I am.
Yeah.
So I'm retired from hockey. Now I'm playing golf, and man, there's some days that I should retire from that too. But
That's the sport, eh, Chris?
But there's
some of us had those.
There's some days like today,
Yeah.
which had a good game and won all the money.
Yeah, you had a good day today.
Yeah.
Now, we're not endorsing gambling in sports, by the way.
Well, everybody else
No,
is.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna run our ad right now.
Yeah, we have an ad. We'll send it to you because I think you'll like it. So I have a question. I know we want to get into a bunch of things.
No, you go.
But you touched on something that I had said I was really interested in. So you were if you weren't going to say pure goal scorer, I know you played the whole length of the ice, but you know what, you were great in the offensive zone, unlike most players. But who was the toughest? I know when you had three guys around you, but who was the toughest in that offensive zone that you had to play against that you can recall?
Well, there was a lot of, obviously there was a lot of good defensemen around. There was a lot of good teams too.
Yeah.
And as far as goalies were concerned, it was kind of funny. Like, for example, Tony Esposito, who was a great goalie, and like one year I'd score 3 or 4 goals against him. Then the next year couldn't score a goal. But that's the way goalies were.
Yeah.
But there's always some really good defensemen around that you knew when you were playing against. That not only you gotta worry about them if you're going in front of their net.
Yeah.
But you also had to be careful because when they come back up, I mean, they're going to score goals on you. So I had to check them too.
Yeah.
And the one thing he had with Montreal and with Scotty is maybe me and Lafleur were not the best defensive players, certainly in the league or the team, but we knew how to play in our own zone because Scotty made sure that we knew.
Yeah.
Because if good teams, they win if everybody knows how to play in both ends of the ice.
Yeah.
And I still see that a lot. I see the Leafs right now. I see, guys like Matthews and Marner now are starting to get the idea.
Yeah.
They're starting to play 200 feet.
Yeah.
I look at Edmonton. They're not quite there yet, Draisaitl and Connor. I mean, man, the one way they're outstanding.
Yeah.
But if you look at them the other way, for them to win, because they're going to be going against the top lines of everybody else, and so you better be able to play both ends.
Yeah.
And same as when myself and Lafleur and when we were playing, we were going against the number one guys, so you had to. If you didn't have the puck, you better be, like, for example, we go play against Boston, and Brad Park used to say, "Who's the toughest guy to play against?" Well, Steve Shutt. And he said, "Well, why?" Well, he says all he would do is if we were in their zone, he'd just come up to me, stand beside me, and put his stick between my legs. And I would say, okay, here's their best defenseman, and I got him tied up. So I got my man.
Yeah, exactly.
That was easy.
So you simplified the game.
We kept it, the KISS system, believe me.
Keep it simple, stupid. Yeah. Yeah. Again, just Steve, 930 games, 817 points, 424 goals, 5th all time on the Habs, 99 playoff games with 98 points, like literally that close to a point a game in the playoffs, which is really, 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 really rare. And I think it speaks to how you used to take your game to the postseason. And there's a story I heard years ago, Steve, so I'm going to ask you if you can verify it or not. But first of all, a lot of the guys on the team that I've talked to said you may have been, like everybody, you had so much talent on those late 70s teams, but they speak about you from your compete level. They said your hating to lose may have been as high or higher than anybody else on the team at that time. Would you agree or disagree?
I would say there was a lot of other guys, but I think that what happened with me is when I got drafted by Montreal, I walked in And, there's, one of my idols was Frank Mahovlich was there. Kenny Dryden, Henri Richard, Jacques Laperriere. All of these guys were there. And it's, you don't realize it, but, you're learning how to win almost by osmosis.
Yeah.
A guy like Henry, Henry didn't say a word. But I mean, when he went on the ice, all he did was work and work and work and work. And there was a reason why he won 10 Stanley Cups.
Yeah.
10.
Henry won 11. Won 11.
And it wasn't, actually it was 11.
Yeah, it was 11. Yeah.
It was 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Jets, Cornway's 10.
Yeah, that's what I always said. I just used to tell people, Henry had to wear, if Henry wore all his
Rings?
his rings, he'd have to take his pants off. But I mean, that, everybody talked about the mystique of the Montreal Canadiens. That was the mystique.
Yeah.
Okay? Is guys just worked, and they worked harder than everybody else.
Yeah.
And for a guy like me coming in and looking at a guy like Henry, with the work ethic that he had,
Yeah.
how could I just kind of float around and say, well, here, I'm a goal scorer, that's all I'm going to do? No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And, that's the mystique of the Montreal Canadiens.
So would you say that in modern era, right, you have a lot of guys who they just play their role. They play I'm the goal scorer, I do this, and I know, and we can point out to some people, within the league right now. But do you think that that's a problem with, Scotty Bowman had a very, he's renowned for being a tough coach on the guys.
Yeah.
Do you think that coaching obviously has changed? You think it hurts the game or it helps the game?
Well, the game has changed in the sense where they're looking for stars.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so every team that's coming in, they're looking at, well, come and see this star, and which is fine. But there's one thing being a star, and there's another thing winning the Stanley Cup. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to win the Stanley Cup, you got to play a 200-foot game, and you'll see it. You've seen it when Scotty went to Detroit. Steve Yzerman was there. And, he was a one-way player at that time.
Yep.
And then he developed Yzerman into, a really good two-way player.
Yeah.
And that's where, Steve went from there to there.
Yeah.
And you see right now, as teams come up, well, we just looked, like use Toronto. When Matthews and Marner became the stars, they're only playing one end of the ice. Mm-hmm. But I see them right now, they know for them to win and go to that next level, they got to play a 200-foot game, and they're actually doing it right now.
Yeah.
And any of these stars, and it's kind of a tough thing, because they're promoting you as the goal scorers and stuff like that. But to win, you've got to play a team game, and that's where everything kind of gets shaded a little bit. I mean, you want to be a star, or do you want to win?
So, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
So everybody that you talk to, like we talked to Espo, and we talked to Hodge, and we talked to Duguay, and everybody talks about the importance of team, right? And you hear it. It's almost cliche, and I, you know what? We've played, and I've played at certain levels of hockey, and what was the key to becoming a team in Montreal while you were in Montreal?
Well, first of all, there was no stars there, because if you ever thought you were a star, then you look there, and well, there's Lafleur, there's Lemaire, there's Ken Dryden. Well, wait a minute, how much of a star am I? So we were all pretty equal.
But equal stars. I mean, I'm not going to blow. Listen, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass.
We were equal, it's if you ever start thinking you're a little bit too big for your britches, all of these guys are put you right in your place.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different then than it is now.
So what like for camaraderie? Obviously, you guys must have hung out together, done things. You're on the road, but when you were home, we talk about Espo and those guys, and they kind of partied together all the time.
Yeah, Phil spoke
like
very
that.
strongly about that. I think that's the way it was when you were there.
The year, we're different eras right now. In the 70s and 80s were a lot different than they are now. And right now, you've got basically a two-tiered system in the NHL, and you've got your core guys, 8 guys that they've signed to 6, 7, 8-year contracts,
Right.
and then all the rest that are 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts. And as a coach or management, what you have to do is you have to convince all of these guys that it is in your best interest if you play as a team and you play for each other. And you have lots of different dynamics. As I say, you've got a guy that's got an 8-year, $60 million contract,
Yeah.
and he's there, he thinks, to score 50 goals.
Right.
Yeah.
In reality, he's there to score goals, but win the cup.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of gets skewered a little bit.
Yeah.
And but if you look at the best teams, if you look at the teams that win the Stanley Cup, it's always the best teams. I mean, you look at
The best teams,
Look
like-
at last
Absolutely,
year
Vegas
with
for
Vegas.
sure, 100%.
It was a team,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you can go all the way down the list. Generally, who wins? It's the best team.
Yeah. And usually the team with the most Canadian-born players. But that's another story for another time.
It's
but-
not one guy wins the Stanley Cup or 2 guys win the Stanley Cup. It doesn't work that way.
If that was the case, McDavid and Draisaitl would get at least Edmonton into a final. And maybe one day they will, but that's the thing. When you and Guy were running the league, you guys are making finals. Well, look at the rest of the team. You had 10 Hall of Famers dressing every night.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it's the power, the strength.
But the team concept was very strong for us.
Yeah.
And as they say, like Scotty, he would say, when you guys got the puck, I don't care what you do. If you don't have the puck, here's what I want you to do.
Yeah, there you
And that
go.
was it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And because he knew that offensively we're fine.
Yeah.
But
I think.
defensively, if you don't have the
Yeah.
puck, you better do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Was he fair, Steve? Like when you look back now, because you were an assistant coach in the league as well,
Yeah.
with the Habs for 4 years, I believe. So, so you came in, you stood on the bench as well, so you got a bit of a sense of that whole occupation per se.
Yeah.
So when you look back at Scotty, because there's a lot of different stories out there, and he had success everywhere he went, really, other than Buffalo. But that aside, I mean, how was he now as you look back about Scotty Bowman?
He was right.
Yeah.
And as they say, it was a different era.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is when he's in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So he took over for Bob Johnson.
Took over a cup-winning team.
And they'd won the Stanley Cup the year before.
Yeah.
Going in 6 weeks before the playoffs, they're not in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So Mario comes up to him and says, Scotty, we want you behind the bench, but we don't want you running the practices. Okay? Now, anybody else would sit there and say, well, I've got 8 Stanley Cups, I'm this and I'm that. The hell with you, I'm doing it. What did he do? Okay. So we got Barry Smith to run all the practices.
Yeah.
They went and won the Stanley Cup. Guess what? He goes to Detroit the next year, signs a big contract.
Yeah.
What's the first thing he does? He
Hires
brought Barry Smith.
Brought Barry Smith over.
So he was adaptable.
Didn't he have Claude Roel running a lot of your practices?
Claude Roel was Claude Durrell was the first assistant coach
Yeah.
in the NHL.
Yeah.
And Claude basically developed all of the guys that weren't playing
Yeah.
as much.
Yeah.
And so, but Scotty, the interesting part about Scotty was he had very little ego. Like just on that thing, if you had an ego, he would tell Mario, like, hey, I'm Scotty Bowman.
Yeah.
Instead, he just said, okay. And he worked around it. And that's the reason why he was so successful.
Yeah.
And, and the other thing too, when he was probably the best bench coach of all time.
Yeah.
We used to we call him the computer. Like right now, you've got 3 guys up in the stands, and they're in the press box, and they're relaying stats like face-offs.
Yeah, yeah.
Who's winning against this guy and that guy. He had it right in his.
He had it all in his head.
He
Yeah.
had it right there.
Yeah.
And he could pick up who was hot at that day.
Yeah.
I remember we played Toronto in the playoffs, and Jimmy Jones
Yep.
was
Good defensive.
a really good defensive
Absolutely.
centerman.
Yeah.
And he was a really good face-off guy.
Yes.
And I remember there was about 2 face-offs. I beat him in a face-off. Well, the next thing you know, he's got me out there taking face-offs against Jimmy Jones.
No way.
Yeah, he just picked up on it right then.
Wow.
But that was the strength that Scotty had.
Wow. So like Lemaire would have got thrown out, you got put in, you beat him, Scotty remembers it and thinks, okay, here's another face-off, O-zone or whatever.
Shut. Take the face off.
Jeez.
Yeah, but that's how good he was behind the bench.
Wow.
Like he was head and shoulders above everybody. And
That's
he
amazing.
wasn't afraid if things were not going right to change it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he would change guys and just change things. He didn't care.
Yeah.
Did not care.
It's a wonder he actually succeeded as a coach.
Yeah, I know. It's shocking.
I mean,
shocking.
Well, the thing about Scotty went. If you look at his whole career,
Yeah.
he went where all the best players were.
Yeah.
He went Montreal, then he went to Buffalo, who had a really good.
You had still the French connection
Then-
are still there. Yeah.
Then he went to Pittsburgh, and then he went to Detroit.
Yeah.
I mean, they all 4 of them were the
Yeah.
premier talent.
Well,
teams.
even his first foray, right, in St. Louis. I
Yeah.
mean, he takes over for Lynn Patrick, I think it was, who really was just wanted to be the signature first head coach of St. Louis. He gave way to Scotty there in November of '67, and Scotty runs the St.
Well,
Louis
who did he
Blues.
have? Who did he bring in?
Yeah, he brings in Montreal guys: Doug Harvey, Dickie Moore, Jimmy
And
Roberts,
Doug Harvey was
Jacques Plante.
Doug Harvey was 44 years old.
44 years old.
45.
Yeah.
So he brought all the old Montreal Canadiens in.
Yeah.
Because he knew that they knew how to win.
I knew how to win. Yeah, my God, they were. Tell you, it's you're that's interesting to hear that. Look, like we got to ask some specifics here, man.
Yeah.
We go Steve. I mean, have you ever in 424 goals in the regular season, but New Year's Eve 75, that shot over Tretiak, man. I don't know if you ever walked on one better than that. I mean, that's got to be at the top of your list, even though it was just an exhibition game. But I'll never forget it. Chris will never forget it. We were talking about it driving in here. What can you share with us about your memories of that game and that goal?
Yeah, we knew that it was interesting because they based in Montreal. So they were there for the 2 weeks. So, we practiced and then they'd practice.
Okay.
So we all knew this was going to be the game.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're both of us eyeing each other. And when we started the game, that was my very first shift. I went down the right side and I fired a rocket right over his shoulder.
I know.
Tretiak. And
It was humming.
for the next 15 years, whenever I met him,
Yeah.
he'd look at me and he'd go like this.
No
And
way.
he'd smile and he'd come and shake my hand.
Come on, really?
Oh, that's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
That's
he
so
was
cool.
Good. He was good, and he knew. But it was.
Nobody was stopping
It
that
was a
one.
rocket. It was
Yeah.
a rocket.
What a game, though. Lambert and Cornway scored the other goals, and I say to people all the time, Kenny had 7 shots on net after 2 periods. I mean, he had 7 shots.
But we knew, and this was actually Scotty's coaching, and at that time, the NHL, we were up and down.
Yeah.
Okay, left wingers would go up and down, right wingers up and down.
Yeah.
Whereas the Russians had a flow.
Right.
And so what would happen is the first guy would start it, he'd pass it, and they roll around, and eventually the guy that started the play would get the puck.
Yeah.
So Scotty said, once that first guy makes that pass, take him right out. Take him out of the play. And so what we did is we took them right out between the two blue lines. Right out.
Yeah.
And that's why they couldn't make any plays.
Okay.
That's why they got their 13 shots.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I say all the time. People talk about it as the greatest game, which was so intense, so unbelievable because it ended up tied, and you know the atmosphere and everything else. And I know you guys are building for it because everyone's thinking the Habs are coming. Here's Red Army, and of course 72 is only 3 years in the rearview mirror, right?
Yeah.
So
So it was a special game.
Yeah.
Everybody, and because they were there for the 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Both teams were.
I didn't know that.
Both teams were gearing
I
up
didn't
for
know
that.
that.
Oh yeah, they based.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that,
They
no.
based out of Montreal.
Wow.
So
wow.
Yeah. So we knew.
Yeah. So you got a good look at them.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump off
Yeah,
that.
What people don't realize, minute and a half left to go in the game, they hit the post.
I know.
They hit the crossbar.
I know. It was crushing. I know how
That would've
that
been-
close they came to winning.
Yeah.
It would have been devastating.
Yeah.
Even Little Lem's interview after, he was so disappointed. You know, Pete was going like, we let everybody down. My God, hardly. You know, I mean, hardly. It was. Look, if you play in the best of 7, you guys are winning 4-1. I'm telling you right now.
Who knows?
Right now. I know.
Who knows?
Well, I'm saying it.
So it leads me to another question, though, as a follow-up, and maybe this is the answer. The most memorable goal to you, the one that you lean back and go, "Yeah, that was me." You know.
That was a memorable goal. But I was more of the like my train of thought was this. Okay, this is what I do for the team.
Yeah.
I'm goal scorer.
You're a goal scorer. Yeah.
So however you do it, doesn't matter. That was my job on the team.
Mm-hmm.
So none of them were really special. That was just my job on the team.
Yeah.
So it's I really didn't think of it that way.
So you didn't go home at the end and go, lean over to your wife. She goes, "How's the game?" Oh, I was
She would have known anyway by then. I mean, well, first of all, the entire province knew, but
Yeah.
I will say this
it was
much.
not. It's like both me and Lafleur, we were goal scorers, and that was our part of the team.
Yeah.
And we knew if we didn't score, our team would have a hard time winning.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
you guys were
that
there.
was where the pressure came in.
Yeah.
From us, every game, when and this is the difference. And even today, if you're on the number 1 line,
Yeah.
you gotta score.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between being on the number 1 line and being on the number 2 line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're on that number 1 line, you got to be there every game.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to win.
Well, I remember probably 50-year goals, and I'll tell you 2 that stand out for me were being the third period after Good Friday '84 to knock the Nords out.
Oh yeah.
When you scored in the third period after everything that went on in that game.
Oh yeah, but I'll tell you the story on that.
Yeah.
The people don't realize that. So actually, Lemaire was the coach, and so at that point, I was getting near the end of my career, and I was in and out of the lineup, and really not playing a lot. So we're in Quebec, we're playing the Nordiques, and then that was the Valentine's Massacre. So they had the big fight. They said, okay, we got another minute or so on this period, that's it. Went in, came back out, and then as we come out, then they announced, okay, this guy's out of the game, that guy's out of the game, this guy's. So they said, okay, we're on it. Let's start the fight all over again.
Yeah.
So they had the second fight. So then it's all get cleared up. So we got like 6 guys on the bench, each side. So I'm sitting there, and I see Lemaire, and Lemaire's looking down the bench. So he looks at me, and I look at him, and I says, you got to play me now. So I went and scored 2 goals.
Yeah, to win the series.
Win the series.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that was probably the Swain song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you scored a ton of big ones, man. A ton of big ones. Look, we've mentioned his name a couple of times. I think we're far enough in now where Steve got to ask you about the Flower. I know you went to see him not long before he passed, and I got to know him decently as well. But I mean, you were a teammate, you were a line mate, you were a friend. The guy was the straw that stirred the drink in the province after Belleville, really, and you would know all this, and you were a peer scoring goals, as you've alluded to. Can you share what your relationship, if you don't mind, was with Guy? And
well, he was, obviously we're been intertwined for the last 30 years, 40 years. And, and when I played with him, I had to change my game. He was the puck carrier, and I was the finisher. Yeah. And that was the way it was. And, I remember I was sitting with him one day, and he says, when I got the puck, he says, I don't even want to think what I'm doing with it. I just want to just go, because if I don't know what I'm going to do, how is somebody going to
defend that?
Yeah. And I said, well, yeah, but how am I going to play with you?
Yeah.
So he fell out for a second, and he gave me a smile, and he says, that's your problem. So I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
But he was a 100% instinct player. We had one meeting, a strategy meeting.
Yeah.
So it was one of the NBC games, playing against, I think it was Detroit. I'm not sure. And at that, the old, they used to have the flag, and so the commercial's up.
Yeah.
Flag.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're waiting there. All of a sudden, the flag goes up, and he comes over to me. Everybody's waiting. And he says, if I get the puck, stay by the ear. I says, the ear? Now, both teams are standing around. This guy's waving the flag, drop the puck. I says, the ear? I said, what's the ear? Now both teams are waiting around. So it goes like this. And he says, the face-off circle? He says, that's the 2 ears? He says, stay on that ear.
On the air.
Drop the puck. Lafleur goes, Lemaire gives it to Lafleur. Lafleur passes to me right on the ear. The puck kept going along because I was laughing so hard. That was our only strategy meeting we've ever had.
Shutty, Larry, and going to get you to talk about him too, because we're seeing him tomorrow, so we've got to get a comment about Big Bird from you. But all the guys that I've talked to have said Lafleur was the worst in practice. You did not want him doing the drill first.
Well, as they say, he was a 100% natural player.
Yeah.
And so Scotty would try and, okay, we're going to practice the power play.
Yeah.
Okay? Oh, okay. Well, we're going to shoot the puck in. The puck would go from Savard to Robinson and then back up to Lafleur, and then Lafleur was supposed to go, it would go. Okay. Savard over to Robinson up to Lafleur. And then all of a sudden you see, the whole deer in the headlights lot.
What do I do?
And then you had to be careful because he would panic, and then just he could fire the puck.
Oh my God!
He'd hit you right in the head with it.
Yeah.
He would panic. So then we tried again, and then he screwed up. Then we tried again, and then finally Scotty gets so upset. He's get out of here. And then the next game, we'd score 2 goals in the power play, and everything was
All due to the practice.
That's right. You know what they say? Practice makes perfect.
Practice makes perfect. We're seeing Larry Robinson tomorrow. So, if I say his name, like what's the first thing that comes to your mind about Big guy?
Just Larry's just a nice guy. Probably one of the nicest guys you'll meet.
Yeah.
As I said, 4 of the nicest guys I ever met were Larry and the 3 guys from Rush that I grew up with.
Yeah.
You grew up with Geddy Lee and...
I introduced Geddy to Alex.
Really?
Yeah. We were 15 years old.
Wow.
So, just really, really nice guys, down to earth. And Larry was exactly the same as those guys. So,
really?
As I always say to the guys that, meet me and Larry, and they say, "Oh, you guys are so nice," and stuff. I said, "Well, he's a lot nicer than I am."
Who did you roommate back in the day? Who would you
Guy.
room with? With Guy?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I had to keep my eye on him.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot more to Guy Lafleur than hockey sticks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Were you guys tight as a team off the ice? Like those late 70s Habs? I mean, to win that often, like,
Yeah. The guys were pretty, everybody had their own kind of little cliques.
Yeah.
Cliques, but generally the team was very tight.
Yeah.
And as most teams are.
Yeah.
It's gotten a little bit different now because there's a lot more changeovers, on a yearly basis on every team.
Yeah.
We used to, our team, you'd probably change over like 2 players a year.
I know. Right.
Now it's
Yeah.
about 6.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you got that, that group, that core group of guys have been there 7, 8, 9, 10 years.
Yeah. So you have a shorthand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you knew the guys, you knew the good parts of them, the bad parts of them, and you learned to accept it because that's the way people are.
We were talking about that in the car.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I've learned to accept your faults.
Yes, I know. I have many. But I never missed last call.
Everybody's different, and you better know what their differences are.
What about this, Steve? Like I touched on it I just kind of blew over it earlier, but Pete Mahovlich, Jacques Lemaire, but did Pierre LaRouche center you and Flower as well?
He did for a while.
Okay.
I think like maybe one year, 2 years.
Yeah.
So what happened was, we started with Pete, then
Yeah.
we had Lemaire, then Lemaire retired.
Yeah.
Then they brought in Bobby Smith,
Right.
and then they brought in LaRouche.
Right.
So we went through.
You went through some different centermen there for sure.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting because the dynamics of the guys are kind of all a little bit different.
They're a little bit
like
different.
Pete still holds the Montreal Canadian record for most assists in one season. And he set up, like, that was Guy's first 50th, I think, and you scored 45, I think, that year. Like, he's just passing you guys, and you guys are firing BBs.
So Pete, and here's what happened with Pete. We had a great line. And when we first started with Pete was the star. He came in from the 72 series.
That's right.
And, he was the big star. Lafleur had a little bit of success, but not anywhere near what everybody expected him to be.
Yep.
And I at that time, I was a flop. And so he was the star of the line. And basically he just kind of wrapped his arms around us and he said, "Okay, let's go." So he was our big protector kind of deal.
Yeah.
And what he did is he gave myself and Guy the confidence to go to the next level. The problem was once Lafleur got to that next level,
Yeah.
both him and Pete needed to have the puck.
Right.
And you can't do that on the line.
Yeah.
And so that's why basically they made the move
trade.
and they put Lemaire there.
Yeah.
And Lemaire basically said, "Here, I'm going to pass the puck up to you guys. You guys do whatever you guys do, and I'll look after the defensive end."
Yeah.
And so that's where that's when Lemaire came in.
Yeah.
And then when Lemaire retired, they brought Bobby Smith in there. It didn't quite work.
Yeah.
because again, Bobby was more of a goal scorer than he was a passer.
Yeah.
LaRouche came in, and he probably had the most skill of anybody.
Yeah.
But to go and play on the number one line with Montreal, like you got to be there every night.
Yeah.
And it was a little difficult for him.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
but he, without doubt, he was probably the most talented of all of us.
Yeah. Hey, a hell of a season too.
Yeah.
I mean, he had 50 goals as well with the Habs. You know, so I mean, it's just you guys had such an abundance of riches. I mean, every time you turned around, you know.
Yeah, but we pushed each other in practices as well, and you know, we didn't. And the one thing that Scotty made sure, Scotty knew that there was one team that could beat us, and that was ourselves.
Yourselves, yeah.
And he made sure every single day that we didn't get too high on our own laurels.
Can you believe you went through a season with only 8 losses? Like when you look back now, I mean, I don't want to get lost in the numbers, but
you know, and the 8 times we lost, the city went mourning. I mean, we were, you know, there were headlines. Well,
what's wrong with the Habs?
What's wrong with the Habs? They only won by 2 goals. You know, the last game. They didn't play very well, but they won. But they didn't play very well.
Yeah,
you know. Yeah. So it was, but Scotty made sure that we didn't get too full of ourselves, and that would have been the hardest. And that happens to a lot of teams.
Yeah.
And this is where he was really, really good. And he'd call guys on, and he made everybody just a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
One more from me, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Okay.
I got to get a thought from you, Steve, about the Stanley Cups. I know you got your name on 73. You're really impactful, obviously, on the next 4 as well. And is there one that stands out? So many say the Flyers in 76. You beat the Bruins in 77, 78, and, of course, the Rangers in 79. But can you speak about the
playoffs? Each one was
playoffs?
different, and they really were totally different. You know, like the one with Philly. If we didn't win that, and if the Flyers won again, then it would have literally, the NHL would have gone back to like a slap shot type of
100%, yeah.
You know, so we were kind of proud about that, and you know, then you know you had the series against the Bruins, and you know we really respected the Bruins. I mean, they were tough. I mean, they were tough as nails, but they weren't dirty.
Yeah.
But again, you couldn't rely on your tough guys to protect you because they were too busy protecting themselves.
Yeah.
But again, there was very little high sticking or cheap shots.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was, you know, I'll tell you a really good story.
Yeah.
Is we're playing against them, and it wasn't a playoff game, but we're playing. And the puck came around my side, and I dumped it out. And Terry O'Reilly came and hit me, and I got my stick up on him. And he said, Steve, he says, I hit you clean. And he says, if you do it again, I'm going to have to do something. So I'm skating up and down the ice, and I'm thinking, he's right. You know, like he hit me clean.
Yeah.
So the whistle went. I went over to Terry, and I says, Terry, you're right. I'm sorry. You know, and that's the respect that we had for each other.
Yeah.
You know, like they man,
because he wasn't a dirty player.
He was not a dirty player, and not very few of the Bruins were dirty players.
Yeah.
I mean, were they tough?
Yeah.
Man, they were tough.
They
as
had
nails.
a tough friggin' team.
They were tough as nails, but they weren't. You know, like Philadelphia was a little bit different.
Yeah.
You know, but Boston, man, they were tough, but we respected them, and if we, at any point, if we would have lost, we would have been cheering for them to win.
Yeah.
You know, like
me too.
that's how much respect we had for the Bruins.
That says a lot, man. You've mentioned that a few times here. So.
Well, and you know what? It's funny because Espo said the same thing about the respect factor back and forth.
He did actually
about that and how they tried to play where you didn't get your stick up. Like you
Yeah.
used that as the,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And some of those things, and we've talked about this in previous episodes.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to commandeer, but about how I think the young guys don't have the same level of respect, and maybe it's because they wear cages throughout their whole.
So we I went through the whole era of, I played against the last goalie not to wear a mask. Which
Andy
was
Brown. Yeah.
And automatically, you keep your shot down.
Yeah.
And if you went into a corner with a guy that didn't have a helmet, you keep your stick down.
Yeah.
But now with guys with helmets,
Isn't that interesting, eh?
So you bring it up,
Yeah.
But that was it was a conscious thing.
Yeah.
Like now everybody's got everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're gonna, kind of wrap this up, but I have a couple of questions that I'm interested in. One, you leave Montreal, you go to LA, and then your career, in post career, what do you miss?
Not much.
No?
Because I went, afterwards, then I tried coach. I did broadcasting. I really like radio. Really love, I was with Red Fisher.
Yep,
I did that
I
with Vic
remember.
Irvin. We had a great time.
Yeah.
Really liked that. Then I did Hockey Night in Canada, which was a little bit more tougher because you have such short segments.
Yeah.
And you got to get in and out.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time handling that.
Yeah.
Then I went into being an assistant coach, which I really like working with the players.
Yeah.
But the problem with when you're coaching, you're responsible for a lot of stuff that you have no control over. Like if your star player is getting divorced, good luck.
Yeah.
And that's the problem when you're coaching. You're responsible for a lot of stuff that there's nothing you can control.
Right.
So after that, then I went and started working with Simcoe Refrigeration. I was looking for. I'd been in hockey for a long time, and I wanted to try and do something else. There's a lot of players that get stuck in the whole hockey syndrome,
Right.
And they stay there their whole life. I just wanted to challenge myself, and that's when I went with Simcoe Refrigeration. And basically, we built all the ice rinks. We built 18 NHL buildings. We built all the NBA buildings. We did the outdoor. We designed the outdoor game. The rinks and stuff like that. So instead of dealing with hockey players, I was dealing with architects and engineers.
Right.
So it forced me. To learn.
Right.
And it was a challenge. And it believe me, it was a challenge. But that was something that I had to do just for myself. I had to prove to myself that I could do it.
Yeah.
So I wound up working with them for 20 years. And the other end of it, I was still playing old timers hockey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And a lot of it.
and I was playing a lot of it. So I was still playing. And when you're playing old timers hockey, you go right back to being a kid. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's fun again. It's not a business.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
I remember we brought Eric Lindros.
Yeah.
And Eric, he didn't want to play. And then we said, well, come on, we're playing in Oshawa, the Generals.
Yeah,
your
it's back
old
where he
team
played.
and stuff.
Yeah.
He got on the ice, the very first face-off, you could see his eyes. And then, man, he was just like a bull in a china shop, just pushing everybody all the way.
That's a big man.
At the end of the game, he says, when's the next game? When's the next game? But then,
Love it.
what he did, they went to pay him. He says, give it to the charity. Then he went to the dinner, and he bought about $5,000 worth of stuff for the charity.
Wow.
He didn't care.
It wasn't. Yeah, he was playing for the fun.
He just loved it. You know,
Wow.
and I got a whole new respect for Eric.
Wow.
Yeah.
Once I met him and saw what he did,
Yeah.
and how he looked after himself,
Yeah.
pretty impressed.
Yeah.
Pretty impressed with him.
That's really good. I've I've only heard from Alanis Morissette about him, and she doesn't speak as highly.
Neither does Obu either.
No, that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So leading to the next question, which is, you played with a lot of people, and mostly Montreal Canadiens, but is there someone that you had a kinship with, the favorite person you played with, and it could have been a junior too, like I don't know.
Well, you know what? If you're a hockey player, it's a whole hockey player mentality, and I would put it in a different aspect. There was not a lot of players that I didn't like.
Right.
Okay, maybe 5 or 6 of the 30 years that I played.
Yeah.
That I would say, man, like I don't want to see this guy ever again.
Yeah.
But generally, most of the players were good, honest players. Like even when I coached, like they were true pros, and they came every day to try their best. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But it wasn't for lack of effort.
Yeah.
It wasn't for all the kind of different reasons that ever be thought. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
But these guys were most 97% of them, 98% were good pros and good friends.
Can I just throw one more name at you? Because he's such a close friend of mine. He was your captain, Yvan Cornway.
Yeah. And Yvan was another one that was a true competitor.
Yeah.
A real good team guy. And again, he learned
Yeah.
from the Richards.
Right.
He learned from Toe Blake.
Yeah.
Again, the mystique of the Montreal Canadiens.
Jean Beliveau.
Got past Jean Beliveau.
Yeah.
Got passed down.
Yeah.
And as I say, there was in I'm not too sure how other teams operated, but I know in Montreal, if you started to thinking you're a little bit too big for your britches, there'd be about 4 or 5 other guys that would just whittle you down to size in a heartbeat. So you're
That's something.
well, which is good.
Well, humility is one of the greatest assets that someone can have, and I know that because I have it. And
Well, look at the guys that played in Montreal.
Yeah.
I mean, do you
Yeah.
see any,
No.
through the history of the Montreal Canadiens?
No.
You just got guys that are just want to work, they want to win, and they're
Yeah.
going to do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah.
And you know what, that comment, and I know that you've touched on that, was not at all my thought process, because you guys made it look so effortless. Like when you say it's because we worked so hard, I'm like, no, it's because you guys were so great. But you know what, you were great because you worked hard, and I hadn't clued in. Like you know that as someone who plays, but you don't know it because you're watching as a kid, thinking you guys were just floating.
Well, the old story: the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
So would you
But
like to ask
like
the
we
last
would,
one?
just on our team, who was more important? Steve Shutt because he scored 50 goals, or Bob Gainey because he stopped 50 goals?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great analogy.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Needed a guy to
there's
score.
no way that
needed a guy
Steve
to
Shutt
stop.
was going to go up and say, "Or I'm the guy."
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at Bob Gainey, Doug Jarvis, Jimmy Roberts, I mean,
Well, look at how
Savard,
many big goals Yvan Lambert scored.
Lambert.
I mean,
Lambert,
Tremblay, Risebrough, Jarvis.
I was not
Gainey.
better than them, and nobody was better than anybody else.
Yeah.
Even Lafleur.
You were the sum of all parts.
Even Lafleur was
Did you ever meet the Rocket? I mean, you must have met him.
numerous times.
Numerous times.
I knew Rocket a lot better than most people because my father-in-law was the same age as him,
Okay.
and we used to go fishing together.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so him and my father-in-law used to every morning have the eye openers, which is Bull's Gin.
Come on. Yeah?
Well, you know, at that age, you know, like they're kind of arthritis and stuff. So it's either you take arthritis pills or you have a couple eye openers. And
That'll be you and I, bud.
who's the guy? Kevin Tibble. You ever Kevin Tibble?
I don't. No.
So Kevin Tibble is actually still working, and I think he's on NBC now. But he was doing some stuff for CBC.
Okay.
And he went up to Hudson Bay with us. CBC, they sent a crew up there, and Rockets. It was this Rockets 50th anniversary, of 50 goals or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So Kevin's up there, and I'm saying, Kevin, I said, if you want to meet Rocket and you want to talk to Rocket, I said, go at 7 in the morning,
Yeah.
knock on his door after he's had his eye openers, and then he'll talk to you. Okay?
Wow.
And he said, oh, okay, thanks. So he goes in, set up. Rocket has his eye openers. Kevin says, do you do that every morning? That was the end of it. Right there.
Oh, jeez.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
So it cost these guys like $2,000. CBC cost them like $2,000 for flights. Never got the interview.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the other day, I'm doing a autograph session with Rocket. We're in Michigan, and Rocket is, you know, he was kind of near the end, and he was stiff, and you know, and just traveling. It was not, you know, he was in pain. So and he was a little grumpy.
Yeah.
So the you know, the guy, the promoter, was starting to get a little nervous. I says, you want to help Rocket? He says, yeah. I says, go and get a colored glass. And I says, go and put some Bull's Gin and grapefruit juice in there and just hand it to him. Okay? Oh, okay. So about 10 minutes later, he comes back and he says, Mr. Richard, I got something for you. So Rocket took that. Oh, how long do you want me to stay for? We're fine the rest of the tour.
Oh, that's perfect.
Steve, what about that ovation for him in '96 when the Forum closed?
Yeah.
Monday night, March 11th.
And you know, see, a thing like Rocket was not only was a great player, but you have to understand the history.
Yeah.
Of the French Canadians at that point in time, they were really that's the second. You know, in Quebec, all management was English.
Yeah.
They really were second rate.
Yeah.
And this was Rocket was their
champion, their savior.
Their champion.
Yeah.
Their savior.
Yeah.
And he didn't. I don't know if he understood it.
No.
Like Rocket was a hockey player.
Yeah.
And that's all he wanted, and Henry too, it's the same. The two of them.
Yeah.
They just wanted to be hockey players.
Yeah.
They were no spokesmen. They weren't taking up anybody's causes. They were just hockey players.
Yeah.
They were just who they were.
Yeah.
And the fans took them to the next level.
Yeah.
Which was great to see. But it didn't have anything to do with Rocket or Henri. They didn't want it, but they did it. And I don't think they realized how important they were to the French population in that era.
Is the Forum still a special spot for you, like from a memory point of view? I mean,
sure. It's if you listen to anybody. Even plays today. Where do people want to play? They want to play in Saturday night, hockey night in Canada in Montreal.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not too many of the guys want to sign there.
No.
Which used
Hopefully
to
that's
bother me
changing,
to no
but-
end. Oh
Yeah.
I want to play here. I want to play. Yeah, but they won't sign.
Yeah.
I think now with what they're doing now,
Mm-hmm.
I think they're doing the right thing in the sense, okay, they're doing a complete rebuild.
Yeah.
They're halfway through it.
Yeah.
Where when I was coaching, Ronald Corey wouldn't allow it.
No, he wouldn't
We're
allow
not rebuilding.
No.
We cannot rebuild.
No.
We're kind of stuck in
Yeah.
the middle. Now they've rebuilt it. And the other thing they said, or they tell the players, if you don't want to play here, let us know.
Yeah.
We'll move you.
Yeah.
We just want players that want to play here.
Yeah.
And I've seen over the last couple of years, they're winning and they're losing, but it's not because of lack of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Those guys are going out there and they're playing hard.
Yeah.
I give them credit to that. They will be successful in a couple of years
I think so too.
when the whole team develops.
Yeah.
But they've got a culture in there right now.
Yeah.
That I want to play here and I want to win here.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to see that psychologically they're on the right path.
Yeah.
So if you could say something to the Montreal Canadian fans from the 70s, but even currently, as yourself, like what would you like to say to the people of Montreal?
Well, the first thing is that they now are a lot more realistic. They were used to Stanley Cup every year.
Yeah.
And it really hurt a lot of teams over the last 15 years. Because the pedestal was too high.
Yeah.
And what they've done right now, they've brought that pedestal down. They understand that today, they've got a young, developing team. They're going to win games. They're going to surprise you, but then they're going to come in and they're going to have a clunker of a game.
Yeah.
But that's maturity. But at least the fans now realize that just because we're the Montreal Canadiens doesn't mean we're going to win the Stanley Cup every year. It doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
It's one of 30 teams now, and it's not just Sam Pollock was the best GM of all time.
Yeah.
Now you've got 30 GMs that are pretty sharp.
Yep.
And it's a pretty level playing field.
Yeah.
And when your time is there, you gotta do it.
Yeah.
But I think the fans realize that right now, that I think maybe now they realize how good they had it.
Yeah.
Well, ending off, we're gonna, and I have to thank you for joining us.
It's been awesome,
and allowing us to be
Absolutely
here.
awesome.
We have this thing. We want to know that when you go out, Saturday night, you're gonna go out to a karaoke bar.
Yeah.
What's the go-to song for Steve Shutt?
First of all, I'm not like Geddy Lee.
But if you had a favorite,
is it a Rush song?
Geddy can actually sing better than I can.
Wow. Breaking news.
So what do I?
What would be the
what?
tune?
I'm more into smooth jazz now.
Oh, there you go.
So what is it? Is it a Sinatra? Is it a?
Yeah, it's Steely Dan.
There you go.
There you
Boz
go.
Skaggs.
Yeah.
Mark Jordan. He's from Toronto.
Yeah.
Toronto guy.
Yeah.
Some of those kind of guys.
Yeah.
That a little bit smoother now.
That groove.
Yeah.
Groove.
I'm in the groove.
Yeah. There you go.
I'm in the smooth.
You're in the groove on the ice,
Smooth
man.
groove.
For many
That is
years.
for sure.
Many years.
Well, thank you again, our special guest, Steve Shutt. This has been Offside with Hawes McGuire. I'm Hawes.
I'm McGuire. G'day.